Great.
Okay, so let's start at far back at the beginning as possible. Can you tell me a little bit about your parents, where they came from, their sort of their lineage here in America, and what kind of people they were?
So yeah, I guess you're serious about the whole personal. Yeah, I mean, I think both sides of my family are Irish. All the way back.
Catholic or Protestant?
I don't think so. Probably Protestant. We don't know that well. We definitely come from hillbilly stock from a couple generations back, so the whole genealogy thing is a bit more distinct than other people's families. But Arkansas land grants, and so the last few generations have been in Arkansas. My mother and father met in the same county, went to the same schools growing up, same high school, and high school sweethearts, married, and very religious, conservative. You could say even in the Bush era, Bush era Republicans, but moral people, yeah, good people.
Now, did they go to church? Did they take you to church? Were you baptized?
Oh yeah. Grew up Baptist. My father's a Baptist minister, is a professor of hermeneutics, even. Pretty strong background, I'd say, in biblical hermeneutics and expository style preaching, and real big background, I would say, in the big classic, right? I mean, I would say I'm pretty comfortable discussing the Bible and mainstream theology, right? At least Protestant theology. That's probably my first big entry into the history of Western thought and philosophy.
So you grew up in the church?
Yeah, I did.
What was your relationship to the church?
You mean like...
Personally, like... Were you scared? Did you fear God?
I don't know, man. I hear this a lot too when you're like a pastor's child or whatever. It all just seems kind of... I don't know, it's real imminent. You're of it, you're in it. It's almost less real to you than if you're kind of a casual churchgoer or something. But it was certainly like the framework of my mind and life. You're brought into that. It's the kind of existential. That was my life. That was everything I have experienced. Comes from there first, I would say. That was my childhood and everything.
So, did your mom have a job, or she's a preacher's wife?
Mm-hmm, yeah, no, she had a separate career. Honestly, I don't know how much I want to tell you about my parents. You know what I mean? I'm kind of tempted. Well, anyway.
No, it's interesting because my dad was a preacher.
Oh, was he really?
I grew up in the church.
Yeah.
He was a Methodist in Virginia.
Oh, no, Methodist, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wesley. No, my family both come from the same. Both sides come from the same monoculture in Independence County, Arkansas. And both their parents knew each other, and it was very. I still have both sets of my grandparents even now. The real anchor of my whole life has been this very intimate and stable set of family relationships. I think it's certainly a big feature of who I am, as much as I know, who I am.
Well, it's really interesting to me because I had a split from the church.
Yeah.
When I was 16. I come from a pretty multi-ethnic background. My mom is from India, she's Hindu.
Mm.
And somebody in the church told me that it was a sin to marry between religions. And I told him to go fuck himself.
Yeah.
And was basically telling me that I was born of sin.
Yeah.
So I basically turned my back on the church, told my dad I was never going to go again.
Mm.
And didn't really ever go again.
What did your dad say? What did you...
there wasn't much he could say at that point because I was a pretty crazy teenager anyways.
Yeah.
But it was kind of he was pissed off too that person had said that to me, That's
that kind of sanctimonious small town, if you will, Virginia. You know what I mean? I think it's more endemic to this whole southern kind of
right
narrowness, and certainly, the religion's complicit with that attitude. But I don't know. You see similar things in. You must be aware, right? The caricature of the old southern religious types and everything. Certainly.
Well, Methodists are certainly much more liberal than the Baptists.
Especially
Arkansas.
In some respects, I'm at least Arkansas Methodist, and so my dad as a preacher has especially while I was growing up, I was taught and preached at all kinds of places. Met a lot of people from different, ideology. Methodism to me is as strange as Calvinism, right? And I don't come from a Calvinist background, but Calvinism is, like, I guess you could say, one of the main lines of Baptist thought. Both of them are quite. And now with my comfort with Baudrillard, I would prefer Calvinism to the idea of a kind of graceless Methodism, where your kind of eternal location is always in flux or something. That'll bend the psyche, right? I don't know, maybe even more than predestination. Fascinating ideas, like really big, gripping ideas. It's kind of too, well, I don't know if I want to go into that specifically, but the whole Western idea, the Judeo-Christian idea of time and history, right? I mean, really is like the backbone of so much of, German and Western thought. And you get a lot of that as a kid, a lot of people don't tease through it, but right, that's a huge mine. There's lots to go back and dig in there.
So, do you still go to church?
Yeah, well, I visit.
Like when you go back, like when you went back home,
yeah,
maybe, but not regularly. Like you're not a member of a church here.
No, I'm not a member here, and it's been. I think I'm still a member at my home church back in Arkansas. Yeah, with my dad and my family. It's not been a priority since I've been in Austin. I've been somewhat occupied.
Do you feel closer to religion itself or spirituality? Like religion doesn't turn you off, organized religion?
No, I'm like, well, I mean, certain respects of course, but I like Zizek's approach. I think organized kind of militant atheism and the same approach in evangelistic Christianity are kind of two sides of the same coin, really kind of desperately trying to fill the gap that is ontological incompleteness, two approaches to the same problem, probably. And that's not mincing words or like.
And that comforts you?
No. What do you mean?
Or it turns you off?
No, I just think that they're like. It's almost uninteresting to me right now. They're both attempting to do the same thing, which is to really skirt some of the bigger issues. Neither are. The big issues for me are: what's your relationship to power structure? What's your ideology? What's the fantasy that structures your reality? And then how can we subvert? Or specifically, how can we achieve a certain specific, I don't know if it's a substantive ideal of freedom, but a project of liberty, at least in my mind. So I'm interested in that, and those aren't interested in that. In fact, both are trying to kind of foreclose inquiries like that.
So basically the church was a big part of your life growing up, not so much anymore. You're more focused on other things, what you're trying to say.
I don't know. I'm not trying to downplay it.
Right.
I see it as essential, you know what I mean? And I don't know, but especially after like a Nietzschean passage and no comment, right? It's like it had its place more kind of in my background, and I don't regret that. But yeah, and I'm not one of these like anarchists either, who's like, oh, it's the church holding you back, and institutional abuses and ideology are just, oh god, it's rife. So I've left it there where it is. Mm-hmm. And I no real ill will. I don't think I was hurt or harmed. I have no need to be in a kind of acting out as a angry, atheist or something. Yeah.
So tell me a little about education, your early education. Did you enjoy school? What kind of, did you go to public school, private school?
Yeah, public school.
What was your relationship to education in general?
People are
combative. Were you a good kid?
Right. Both, I think. So I was both in public school, and I think my parents believed in public school. My parents might have more libertarian like affectations now, but I think they were fine to send me to public school in Arkansas, and great. I think I did all right, and other people with the same inclinations can do all right as well. But It was a constant process of, I don't know, overcoming programs and expectations. And I just, around the 5th and 6th grade, I just got really, I guess you started, maybe if you're born with a different insight or different drives, you start to see through things a little bit earlier. And I just didn't like that these educators were so transparent. It was clear that they were fresh out of college. You know, even kind of in the 5th and 6th grade, I was like, oh, I don't have long on these people already. And I kind of resented the fact that they were quite heavy-handed. Especially at that time in Arkansas, there had been some school shootings, and there was a direct kind of clinical, like militaristic aspect to how they began running the school, you know, and I could feel it then, the whole kind of, I don't know, shepherding of it all. It was gross. And yeah, through the rest of school, I think I just started shirking off rules. Rules are things that, I don't know, try to make my own kind of law to myself and everything.
What school shootings? Like?
I think it was one in Jonesboro back when I was in the 4th or 5th grade. And maybe if I remember. Both the boys, I think, were minors at the time and went to prison till they were, or, you know, juvie till they were like 21. And they stood outside of school and they shot a few people, if I remember. Or it was one of those things where they were like in the woods, I think, and there were a bunch of kids waiting outside. And that had it was the right moment around, this was a few years after Columbine too, you know, so things were changing in the public schools, but it specifically hit the Arkansas school system, so things began to be, you know, there were lockdowns on campus, and we would constantly be drilled, especially that first year, about, well, like, you know, here's what we do in an active shooter situation, kind of like maybe like the whole nuclear moment back in the 50s and 60s, you know, get under your desk, and here's the closet, and that was, I saw how that worked on my peers, worked on me too. Friends of mine would make stupid jokes, you know, 5th graders making jokes about just like random violence and stuff, and of course getting sent to the, you know, the heaviest hand. You know, these days they'd get sent to Guantanamo or something, you know, like, it was all just callous and cold and very by the book and just hard stuff, and of course administered by these people that we were all kind of seeing through, and that's my memories of like middle school. But I did well in school. I did really well in high school, and class president, you know, student council, all that stuff. Went to nice college, nice scholarship, same thing. Student body president there. I thought I did well. Fraternity, lots of social relationships. But at the same time, you know, more radical literature and more anticipation of something else besides, you know, mainstream political participation.
Was there a seed that sparked that, like, radical thought?
I don't think so. And
a book or a piece of magazine article, or?
When I was in high school, I read Robert Paine's Life and Death of Lenin. I always thought Lenin was an interesting character, but I've always been interested in people that with a will to power. You know, I mean, most people are fascinated by, you know, the Napoleons of the world, but Lenin was cool. I read a little bit of Bakunin by accident, just probably because of that, and Nechaev's Catechism, and then I don't know, I sympathized with Marxist.org. You know, the internet was just kind of really coming to, by my time in high school, the internet of 2002, 2003, you know, was a different place from like in the late 90s. And, Marxist.org and a bunch of other places. So there was a lot of literature out there, and I discovered all that and read a lot of Marxist stuff, but I always kept a libertarian attitude. I don't know, I've been attracted to revolutionary Marxist stuff for a long time.
Were your parents interested in that type of thought at all?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, my dad's you could say, a biblical scholar, and you know, theology, and but my mom's definitely a kind of tried and true conservative in the, you know, the Tea Party sense. She's, you know, mainstream like that, but no, not really. I don't know.
Do they clash on their viewpoints at all?
My mom and my dad?
Yeah.
Well, no, I think that mostly these people have a really deep connection. You know, they've known each other for many, many decades, and I don't know. I don't think there's any kind of fundamental incompatibilities. You know, they seem to be, they kind of complement each other neatly. Of course, their ideas differ, and yeah, nothing too fundamental.
Did you enjoy high school? Did you have a good 4 years?
Yeah, high school sweetheart and athletics. It was really fulfilling, I thought. I wish I had more. No regrets, but I mean, I wish I had more kind of perspective. I felt maybe at 18 I still didn't really understand some of the things I wish I could have understood about the world, but I think anyone would say that. So, beautiful time. I loved it. I'm nostalgic, about it.
Did you get out of Arkansas as a kid much?
Sure. Yeah, my parents were diligent about, like U.S. road trips, the whole like stereotypical kind of road trip things. So out west, up north, New England, Florida, all that stuff, coasts. And we saw a lot of in the United States when I was a child, and Canada at one point, Niagara. So not exactly international, but of course we were kind of lower middle class. So it's a flight to Europe's not on the table.
Mm-hmm. What about your first memories of the internet, using the internet?
Yeah, man. I'm super nostalgic about it, man. I was just really excited about the internet. Like in 4th and 5th grade, I remember Napster. Like I remember the Napster moment and being in school and my friends showing me like, check this out, dude, you can download all these songs. And so we downloaded like video game songs, and it was just so cool. I remember like the dial-up speeds, and yeah, dude, it was just so great. And I remember when it was shut down too, kind of more vaguely, like, oh, they stopped it. And then my friend Zach Cuban and his brother Sean, we went through all the file sharing stuff together, the LimeWire and ShareBear. I don't even remember all this stuff now, but yeah, the internet was a really cool place. So instant messaging was big with my peer group, that was getting on AIM and doing all that stuff. We did a lot, yeah. And I was always, like I said, I was always reading. It just seemed a lot of stuff we did was on that kind of late web 1.0 communication platforms and websites and stuff. Very nostalgic about it.
What did the internet mean to you as really, really young?
The earliest I remember is getting on, like Netscape and I think AOL at one point. We had AOL accounts, and I remember the old encyclopedias with web access to, like, I just remember thinking like, wow, anything I want to know. And this isn't like some commercial for the internet. I just was turned on by it. Wow, I can get it. And it was always like that for me, man. Like even then I was like, this is important. This is a big deal. I think more so than, I don't know. I was just always excited about it.
And what about guns? What was your first experience with guns?
I want to say maybe Boy Scouts, or I know my uncle and my grandfather hunted, but I don't think I never went with them. I think my dad had a gun under his bed as well. It might have been a BB gun. I think it was a shotgun. But I don't think I really shot a gun until I was like 19 or 18 or something. Like my dad had one of these like single shot shotgun shell, like pistol. We went shooting with that one time. But I think I always remember being around like guns or near guns or gun culture in Arkansas. Everybody hunted, especially it's hunting season. Half the school doesn't show up, So it was always something that like I saw as benign. And then I specifically identified and understood a lot of that conservative Second Amendment culture, and was broadly accepting of, that mentality, like, the ideology behind it.
Were you an Eagle Scout?
No, I dropped out. Let's see. I went to Boy Scouts until like Love, basically. I think it's like your second rank as a proper Boy Scout. I didn't have time, and I think they wanted me to be a chaplain, and I didn't feel like they were really committed to the ideas, and I had things to do at that point. It's a time when you need to differentiate yourself academically. There's AP and there's athletics and all these things, and I don't know. It seemed to that troop. I don't mean to besmirch them if they ever see this by any chance, right? But it just didn't seem like they were really in it, and I didn't want some, I don't know. And I'm not really a joiner anyway. I really don't like deriving identity from a particular group or something. So it's just not me. And also, I'll say it now. I didn't really have the vocabulary for it then, but it seems specifically in Arkansas, or at least in that troop, Boy Scouts was a preparation for like military service. And maybe it's always been that way. I know its foundation wasn't exactly that, but these skills all translate neatly to it. And we were always camping at like military bases and stuff, And it's cool to see the equipment and to camp in those things. But a lot of my friends from that time, ended up going guard or full on, active duty military. And it's a shame, really, to kind of get caught so young like that.
My brother was an Eagle Scout, and I thought it was the lamest thing ever.
It's a little, yeah.
Smoking pot, making fun of them,
Oh, yeah.
like fixing roads and stuff, and doing good deeds.
I'll admit, I almost wish I was an Eagle Scout because, you learn some stuff. If you really do it, you learn some real stuff.
A lot of good shit.
And a lot of those people end up being, really successful, just... It's a kind of more intimate understanding of let's say, some survival skills in nature, and but I couldn't follow through, man.
So you brought up military service and friends being in the military. How did you feel about that at the time, or even now, about your friends going off to war?
I feel different, much different in the last few years than I did, when I was in the 7th or 8th grade. When you're young, it's easier to be the old canards of patriotism and everything. I think most intelligent people, I want to be careful not to offend anybody, but most intelligent people can be suspicious of that kind of overeager military recruiter hanging around the high school buildings and stuff, That's a little scary that they let that happen, but especially, looking back at what the last experience was for our generation in Afghanistan and Iraq. Jesus, man, fodder for these things. And they get you, right? They get you with your heart, you want to do something for your country, you want to be important. They get you with pulling the worst strings for such a kind of depraved and, I don't know, bureaucratic industrial structure like that. But these days, I'm deeply suspicious of what I call the warfare surveillance state. What we're participating in is basically a warfare surveillance state. War is the health of the state. This is a state been permanently being at war, and I'm very suspicious of this Syria theater. I know you saw it, and it looked like we were going. Amazing that we didn't. But how much do we have to, just this circus? I'm not going to go kill people for those people I see on TV.
Is there a way you would go to war for this country?
No, man, I'm not loyal to this country. I pledge no allegiance to this country, and its document, especially now, is just used as, even if I'm not even nostalgic for the document, but it's just used as the excuse for wholesale abortions of liberty, freedom, and good people's goodwill. This ship's going down, and I'm hoping to help it.
So what would you go to war for?
I think war is important. I think the spirit of war, the spirit of, like Nietzsche's warrior or the revolutionary imagination, these things are important. All the kind of illiberal values are in conflict, and conflict is important. But I wouldn't go to war in an organized setting for a nation state, or, I wouldn't do that.
This is maybe a loaded question, but what do you think, in a nutshell, what do you think we are constantly going to war for?
I don't know, man. I always want to avoid sounding like some nut job. It's so easy to sound like one. I really don't have some overarching conspiracy theory or something. It's less romantic than that, what's really happening, but it's inertia. We go to war because we can, and it's both profitable. It serves the interest of the world's lone superpower, the United States, and it is, I think, the kind of underlying terror necessary to keep up this make-up illusion that we call neoliberalism. Well, we got to make the world safe for democracy and open up markets so we can all exchange our goods and consume. And, well, what's necessary to make that happen is extreme brutality all over the earth. Extreme brutality. Proxy war is a massive intelligence network, and huge acts of sovereignty that. It's amazing too, the kind of doublethink this population performs. Extreme brutality. I don't know, man.
I think that's a pretty good answer. So going back to your youth,
I'm always wary of answering these personal questions because eventually someone will fixate and say like, well, and then it explains you in some sense, right?
It's like that
myth making.
Yeah, and like the one moment that
And I'd rather just present or be, and this is your show and everything, and I don't. Old Foucault is good about that. He's like, look, I don't want to answer personal questions.
I get it, but it's a good way of kind of founding who you are. At a deeper level.
That's just it. Like, are there deeper levels? Is there an essential who I am? No, I don't know really, and that's probably ideology. But I want to be a good.
The mind of the viewer.
Yeah, man. But I don't want to be created that way for them. I'm already like mediated in different ways, and I don't know. I always risk being explained away, and I don't like that.
It's an impossible scenario to get into in any type of movie.
I know. I've answered so few.
It's like walking into a web and saying, well, I'm not going to get stuck.
Right. And, I haven't drawn the line. I've never said no directly, but I always have kind of tried to play down personal questions and to get to the heart of, I have an agenda too. There's a reason I want to do this, It's always that balance.
So, what is a private law society?
Oh, I love that. I took that from Hoppe. I think Hoppe imagines it in a number of different ways. He's never, like any good theorist, he's never direct on the specifics, but it's basically a world where all negotiation, administration of justice, and policing are done by private institutions. And I'm specifically grasping like with the administrative enforcement side of things, but a private law society is also one where everything is kind of done by voluntary contract and enforceable agreements that can be mediated in private institutions as well. So you basically the easiest way to do it is translate all public institutions and imagine private versions or competing private versions of those. You still have a system of law, and this is a kind of hurdle for people to overcome, like anarchy, then we wouldn't have. No. You still kind of have a rule of law, but there's private ways of adjudicating and deciding, juridical questions.
Can you give me an example of a private law society in existence now or in the past?
I don't think there. So the question is, like, categorical. I don't think there have been private law societies as like in total, right?
Ever?
I'm not sure, maybe, who knows, but to my knowledge, no. And I think there's always been, to my knowledge of history, there's always been a state, relatively weak, relatively strong, but this tradition continues a monopolist of power, What is that?
That's your mic.
Am I sitting on it?
No, it's some feedback from something nearby or something.
Oh, it's probably one of the other microphones that the FBI put in there.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, that is a funny story. We've been monitored by DHS since February of this year. Yeah. Anyway, we'll come back to it if you want. But you were asking about Has there ever been one?
Has there ever been a private law society?
Oh, sure. There's been anarchy, like Somalia. That's the perfect libertarian utopia. But I don't know. I don't think so. At least not in the way it's been imagined. I don't think it's ever been arrived at naturally, organically, or there have been partial solutions, like as there are now. This is probably the most anarchic time it's ever been, just because of the technological availability and practicality of some of the relations.
Well, that actually brings me to the other question: is what would America look like right now? Like, if you were to describe somebody who has no idea of any of these concepts, like, what would this country look like as a private law society if you could snap your fingers and tomorrow it was one?
I wouldn't, number one, because I don't know. I'm a tactics guy, a strategy guy.
No, but in a perfect world, like, say things just...
There's no thing. And for me, especially now, I'm coming to think that, like, it's the constant... Anyway, I want to answer your question, but I'm not interested in, like, the perfected utopia at which we arrive,
But to explain to people, what I'm trying to get across is to explain to people what a private law society is.
Yeah,
so you could say, like, well, if you called the 911...
Yeah.
Someone would show up who was like, because people would want to say, first of all, and 911 is a perfect example of that, because 911 only works for certain people, right?
What do you mean in what sense? Practically, or do you mean like
I mean,
So
practically, like 911 doesn't work if you're black and you live in the ghetto, but it works if you're.
That's what I thought. That's not practically. That's you mean like. Well, I guess it is practically, right? Yeah.
So the question is like,
Yeah.
what would in a private law society, what would happen if you called 911?
Right. I don't know if there'd be the direct translation of it. Let's imagine that there would be. You would
Right.
you would simply have competing police societies or private paramilitary groups, or I mean, however you want to describe it. Right. These are security providing agencies. They would double with police functions or something. That's how it's been imagined or theorized.
It's kind of like Blackwater.
I don't know, because those depend heavily upon government contracts and have a kind of government and army ethos and kind of aesthetic. I think this doesn't have to be that. It's like a service provider in your community or in your region.
Kind of like the Hasid ambulance in South Williamsburg.
I'm not exactly...
Brooklyn.
How does that work?
In Brooklyn, the Hasids,
Yeah.
you know the Hasids?
I don't think so.
The Hasids are, they're super Orthodox Jews.
Oh, okay, right. Hasidic Jews.
With like beards and
Yeah,
little
yeah, yeah.
twisty
They
things.
provide their own security for
They
themselves.
have their own ambulances and security and stuff?
Yeah, it would be like that. I mean, Hoppe specifically imagined ethnic and ideological communities with tighter and more intolerant, divisions than other theorists. So he has imagined a world where, specifically to use your kind of, in certain ethnic communities where 9/11 or 911's unavailable, these people might still have to be segregated because they live in a bunch of, like an intolerant area, or a bunch of white racists have kind of forced them to the periphery or something, and they might have to band together and come up with their own service like that. But essentially, yeah, you would have to pay for a service like anything else with a market price. So like the old municipal fire stations that are busted in some counties, once they put your fire out, they leave you a bill, because the city's broke. Same thing.
What's the homestead principle?
The homestead is a kind of first mover principle. Like if you're the first person to like make use of a piece of property or to occupy like a space where you want to live, or you can assign, or property rights are kind of ascribed to you by justification because you were there first, you made use of it first. And this is like call it like a moral fundament of libertarian ethics. Ethics, anyway, yeah.
How does that apply to ideas?
I'm not sure that it does, and I question intellectual monopoly entirely. Now, there's room for a lot of debate over this. A lot of libertarians and anarchists believe that intellectual property is consistent with old enlightenment ideas of property and everything, but I don't think you can have property in ideas specifically because ideas aren't scarce. I come up with an idea, I give it to you, we both have it. We can't really have conflict over it. We both have it. To assign property rights in it is it's an interesting and oftentimes convenient and lucrative legal fiction, but I don't know that it applies, that it really helps satisfy conflict, and therefore it's kind of, it's a complication rather than an expedient way to help society. Did I answer that question? I'm not sure if I did.
Yeah, I mean, how does the homestead principle apply to ideas? You said
I don't think
doesn't.
that it does. Yeah. And I'm not a big libertarian ethicist, and even though I have lots of friends in the Von Mises camp and everything, I don't thump Rothbard, man, and I'm kind of interested more in, bad Jews ethics and an ethics of revolution, and it's wrong. I want to be careful. To assume a neutral free agent, to assume the agency and free will and all these things, as they do, kind of a priori, and this is a mistake, and it's not clear at all in any way that there's free will or accountable actors, or it's a whole separate thing that these guys try to avoid.
What is anarcho-capitalism?
It's kind of a revision. I don't know if it's ever, especially in its essential times, as people would, describe it, if it was ever called that. I don't know. It seems, though, that it expresses a strain of individualist anarchist thought. So highly, let's say people with the will to power, and the desire for anarchic relations, think that the highest expression of capitalism, at least capitalism as, let's say, like the bourgeois ethic, I can be the maker of my own world and satisfy contractual obligations and be responsible for myself, this kind of I am a man and law to myself. Anarcho-capitalism is a way of developing a free market environment for free and responsible agents like that to fully flourish, you know, to kind of have the individual's kingdom of their dreams. I think it describes those conditions. Man, that's the best way I can, why not? No one's ever asked me that before.
So what are your beliefs on property, intellectual and physical?
I like to flirt with the mutualists. I don't know why. I just think there's a lot of essential thought from like the 19th century and Proudhon and some of these guys that's worth revisiting. But I think property theft is an interesting idea. Like, there's clearly something wrong in theft, but property isn't necessarily inviolable. Just because you say you have this house here, I mean, doesn't always make it so. And if you're not using it or putting it to good use, and it doesn't just mean you should, like the old Jewish concept of, what's it called, Jubilee, you know, where we kind of reset all the property accumulation every, 50 years or something. That's interesting. I think these things are worth playing around with, but the old Enlightenment ideas of property contribute to a stable civil society, fine. I'm willing to walk with you a little ways, but it's all worth suspicion and inquiry and questioning to me, and so I haven't settled where I am there yet.
And what about intellectual property?
I'm more persuaded that intellectual property is a fallacy and used often as a tool for basically plunder and, I don't know, privation and wrong acts. And it's bad, in short. And I don't think, especially empirically, it hasn't been proven that it actually even fits this wealth accumulation concept that we give it. Like, well, we do it because it helps innovate and it's good and people do things with the ideas that are protected. It's a wash. It's specious, it's fallacious, and it justifies all this evil and violence that a number of these organizations are able to do to people trying to promote ideas and promote the kind of collaboration and cross-pollination that is essential to creative thought and development.
What about music and movies?
Yeah, I mean, same way. I mean, can you really have property in music and movies? The practical answer is obviously no, you can't. Is it worth ruining these people's lives for trading and what's called online piracy? No, it's not. But I don't just want to make a utilitarian argument. It is better to make a justified philosophical argument or a logical argument about it. Just like a song, right? I can hum a tune and you can hum it. I mean, you can't assign property rights to patterns, images, concepts, like visual concepts. It's a useful, like I said, it's a useful legal fiction sometimes, but I don't know, it contributes to abuse.
So how would you think artists would be able to make money off of music and movies?
So there's no question that if you were granted a limited monopoly and you have a really hot property, that you're going to make a ton of money. There's no question you're going to make that money. But it's the old, like Bastiat says, it's kind of fallacious because you're only imagining one dimension. It's a crime that Lucas was able to maintain the monopoly on the Star Wars franchise. Think of the profusion of art and projects that could have been created had other people been free to do work with those. And even free of Disney, yeah, maybe they'll upgrade some of what, his work, but come on, man. The culture as a whole would have done more. There would have been more value and wealth created, kind of natural value. And, that's harder for people to kind of grab onto because they can't see the one person with the monopoly getting the cash, But no question, like, our cultural experience and lives would be a bit richer, if you're into that kind of thing, if the monopoly didn't exist. I'm sure there's another way to answer that, but I guess that's where I go first. No, that really gets to the heart of the matter, but so the one level of the analysis and critique as well, like, okay, the kinds of overt actors, the components and officers of liberal courts, and the whole history of liberal judicial institutions, I think is a good one, actually. The history of common law seems to be fairly stable over many hundreds of years. The English model is a great one. And maybe I'm saying that because I came to law school and respect, some of that legal thought, but there's a kind of advanced decadence, especially now, post-law and economics moment, and kind of judicial freewheeling and policy making from the bench and everything, which is really destructive and interruptive of the conditions of stability which might otherwise promote better civil outcomes, but I would want to go to a higher level, which is that yes, even if these things, the policeman and the the barrister and the judge, even if those kind of all work, they're now especially pressed in service of a system which is bent on the administration of life itself, the biopolitical administration of populations in total. And as you kind of got to the surveillance ethos is like the highest guiding principle, that like all human motivation and action and will be controlled and kind of pressed and leveled into this herd that is managed and in the end kind of sustained. Benevolently is the fiction, but in the end to all of our detriment, because it erases anything liberal about the so-called liberal justifications of their use. So big picture, devastatingly dangerous and awful.
And how do you feel about the Trayvon Martin case?
Oh man, I mean, there's so many levels to go into, right? Convenient pop pseudo event, distraction extraordinaire. What other stories did that cover up in our foreign policy or escapades around the world? Good thing that we can all rile each other up, with a story like that. I'm not saying that there wasn't some injustice or committed against this boy, and I'm not callous like some of these conservatives who kind of, well, I don't want to be unfair, but I mean, once the lines were drawn, people demonized Trayvon, they demonized Zimmerman. I didn't fall for it, man. It's a distraction, and stand your ground and all these other laws that these anti-gunners got in on. I mean, we didn't even feature it. It was a classic case of self-defense and reasonable doubt. They couldn't prove that the guy acted badly, enough that he meant to kill the guy. All right, cut and dry, but the media kept making it this thing and just feeding the fire. And I don't want to criticize media. I'm past that, but distraction.
So getting back a little bit to what we were talking about before, what is counter-economics?
Oh, like agorism generally?
Yeah.
I guess the counter-economy is, there's tons of strains of agorism. I'm not directly familiar with anything but the kind of main inspirational literatures, but how can we participate totally in the black market, outside of all the white markets or sheep markets? Like I don't want any of my commerce to trickle into the federal or state or local coffers. I want to live directly independently of the will of others or the coercion of any mechanisms of the state or on up the chain, local or federal. So these people try to, as much as possible or as principally as possible, live independently, according to their own kind of laws and codes. In practice, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I've been through a few agorist communities. I think things probably work better in New Hampshire, in Keene and those places where the Free Staters are. But in practice,
can you tell me a little bit about what's going on there?
In New Hampshire?
Yeah, for example.
I was invited to Free Keene or that other event, so I really missed a big opportunity there to actually go see. But for years, I've watched, the Ridley Report and all the kind of activists and events happening up there. Pete Iyer and the Cop Block and all these. I mean, there's mutualist defense pact agencies and stuff like that. I mean, like they're trying and experimenting with all these cool projects up there. It's a great little experiment in seizing state power and trying to like inflict your libertarian utopia on people. But I'm suspicious of that strategy. I don't mean to deeply criticize it. It's great and interesting, and these are moral and good, humane people. But I think in the end, you can't. It's the kind of trap the Marxists fell into. You can't use the state to sublate the state.
But what is, like, for people who don't know, like, what is actually going on there?
Right. So the Free State Project, God, it's probably... I met one of the founders when I was in Berlin, but I don't know, maybe it's 20 years old, maybe it's 10 years old now. Sorry that I don't remember, but it's this organized effort to move many people to New Hampshire to flip the state legislature and all the other institutions toward a libertarian disposition, and then to enact or elect all the people that will kind of carry out liberalize the state and turn it into libertarian kind of stomping grounds.
So it's just a movement at this point, like it's not actually happening?
No, it's happening, yeah. And so it's certainly happening. In fact, I think it's really successful, and I don't know if they've met in terms of commitments, they might have just met their goal as well. I think they were like, God, I'm not fresh up on it, but there were 35 or 50,000 people they wanted to sign up. I think they got them all. So within 10 years, they'll all be there if they hold true and everything. And many thousands of people have already moved there, and they've already taken like a half dozen or a dozen seats in the legislature. And if anyone sees this from there, they'll be so upset that I don't know the details. But from all of every time I check in and I listen to LRN.FM and all their radio shows and stuff, they're having a blast, and it's all coming together, in their mind.
Is that battery?
Yeah, it's battery.
Cool if I get some water?
Yeah.
Skirt, skirt. Alright.
So your father was a Methodist. Oh, you said you grew up in the church, or your father was a Methodist minister?
I grew up in the church. My dad was a Methodist minister.
Wow, man.
Started out in small town Virginia, Barron County.
Yeah.
Where my brother was born in Roanoke.
Dude, the Roanoke, yeah?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Moved up to D.C. My mom went to law school.
Georgetown?
I was 13.
Wow.
Yeah, Georgetown.
That's awesome, man.
I'm good anytime you guys want to start again.
Yep.
Your parents still together?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm just going to roll the answer. Starting to conserve as much card as possible.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
What kind of cards, how big are those cards in there, man?
32.
Okay.
Right.
Now, can you see this if I put this here?
No.
Yeah, fine.
What is Blackstone's ratio?
So Blackstone had been Franklin Difford, but I think Blackstone's was, and this is the English jurist who's kind of much praised for his contributions to liberal theory, but better 10 guilty men go free than one innocent man be punished. And this is like, I took a criminal law class, and it's kind of mystical why we all just held to that, as a kind of, it was celebrated, for a long time. It still is, but old Mitch Berman was like, my first year in criminal, he was like, yeah, why is that true? And it's not immediately obvious why it should be, but it expresses an attitude to justice which I think is good and humane, that it's better not to punish the innocent. It's better to let the guilty go free. And that ratio expresses that it's better to often let the guilty go free rather than punish the innocent, rather than have a total state which can enforce all of its diktats. And it's okay that we're serious about rights. That means that we allow some social bad to happen. Yeah.
And what is virtue terrorism?
Virtue terror is, I think I read a couple essays by Zizek about it, but it's described in Badiou, I think, or Rancière, maybe Badiou, but it's the idea that you would use your life even as a kind of ultimate arm. The revolutionary specifically in Badiou's imagination recognizes that he's expendable, that he's just a part of a kind of hierarchy ultimately if the cause is just enough or powerful enough. And it's a kind of Zen attitude I'm willing to carry forth with my objectives, regardless of its impact on me. There are higher things, and this is Nietzschean. This is what so much of the post-Marxists really just salvaged Marx by kind of infusing Nietzsche and the spirit of Nietzsche into their projects, but that there are things beyond a happy, just life and comforts and love, that there is pain and hardship and indifference to suffering, and virtue terror is part of that. And you can make someone feel that you're going to carry through with your project regardless of what happens to you, regardless of fate.
Now, is that sort of a samurai attitude?
I think, yeah.
Is that it?
You could call it that.
Is that to say that's within your lifetime, or
What do you mean?
Is that more of existential, this project will go on even when I die, other people will pick it up and.
So, I'd want to revisit Badiou and on the essays that set it up, but my understanding is specifically that this is a kind of personal attitude. Zizek was interested in Robespierre. He would even die, and he used that as an article of faith with the people the Frenchmen he was talking to. Even if the revolution takes me, you kind of use it in that moment. It's an act of terror, right? The kind of good terror that all of these liberals or these leftists, these radical leftists are interested in. And I mean good terror in that literature's specific sense. A lot of the radical thinkers, from the late 20th century are interested in not just these wholesale, I don't know what the word is, but like foreclosure of all terroristic acts. Like, oh, we can't just say that violence is bad, full stop, always, absolutely. No, this is to avoid, whole chapters and dimensions of what might be otherwise just and necessary political acts. Sorry if I'm getting distracted, but no, it can be used, it's a person using his life in the end and other components of his life with indifference and hardness and as a kind of ultimate threat, credible threat.
So is it a way of life, or is it a state of mind you enter?
I don't know I don't think it's a way of life. I think it's a tactic or again, like a method of terrorism. It's a specific terrorist act sometimes.
So like a state of mind you put yourself in?
I don't know. Like, I can give it use cases, but I don't know if it's.
Well, does it apply to you?
I really think, and I gave a speech about why I thought that it did, and I assume that you pulled from that. Now, this was before I had to really use some of that ethic, but it was used. Which is that, come fate, come whatever, come what's coming, this will be done, I promise. And you kind of have to use yourself as that credible threat. Like, by dint of will, if you will, but I don't like to use the word will. But it will be carried through. And what happens to me is just historical accident.
How do you feel about wealth? Do you want to be rich?
Maybe because I was born American and middle class, yeah, sure. Who doesn't want to be rich? So, yeah. But I think the commitment to bourgeois standards of living is that kind of temptation that co-opts so many people. I've seen a lot of people co-opt it. And why not, right? You can have it all. You can be comfortable. You can have a great life and kids and all the good things that you want, Just turn it in, hang it up, play ball. And that is the kind of siren song that distracts you from maybe better things.
Is that what you, I don't know, I want to say respect, but is that what you sort of revere about rappers?
About rappers?
Gangsters?
I don't know if I respect rappers.
No.
I don't know. I mean, it's not like
They didn't have to cash it in. They got rich. They didn't have to sell out.
Like clips, right? Like openly singing about, hey, I push blow,
Exactly.
I'm gonna push up. I don't know.
I mean, believe me, I grew up. I bought into that.
I don't know.
I still respect it to a certain degree, and like I'm not respected, but I don't know. I'm attracted to it.
I did. I'm attracted to it too. A lot of people are, right? And they can't explain why.
Because they're not pushing them. They're not punching a card and.
Right, but
selling it out.
And this is my limited view, right? I never lived in LA, you know what I mean? Or Chicago, or I never had to have that life. But I did some study of intentional communities and gangs in college, and there's only a few ways out, man. And like the difference between working at McDonald's or working in a gang, I mean, come on, like that's a way to achieve some status. It's a way to make something of yourself. And I don't want to be particularly fatalistic about it, but a fatalistic reading is useful there, or a concept is useful. You got to do what you got to do sometimes, and I don't mean to be all like Breaking Bad about it, like that's to kind of paint over it, but at the same time, I'm not sure I respect rappers, right? They contribute to or are the blind conduits of a greater ideology which encourages a kind of base materialism, and it's a diversion. Socially.
Well, now you're generalizing about rappers because
I've listened to a lot of rap lately.
I can play you some stuff that you probably really dig.
Yeah, you're right. Look, man, I mean, Illmatic and some of the.
I'm sure those guys down at the Great New Books could play you a ton of good stuff.
I'm sure they could. You're right.
Prez and shit.
I'm generalizing, but I'm taking a read specifically from like the current rap culture, right?
Right.
Where Kanye can put out Yeezus and everyone can praise him for like some kind of genius, And that's unfair to take a swipe at Kanye, I guess, but hyper-materialistic, hyper-modern, and It is the mass unconsciousness. It's the despair that knows not it despairs.
It's what sells, yeah. So, but I think I got another whole new set of questions, but we should just maybe like do it in the car.
It's fine.
Get the printing underway. Sorry, 9 o'clock.
I started your other card going, so.
Perfect.